Go ahead. There was one play yesterday, Neil, where, typical soccer fashion. I watched the whole game where one of the Iranian players goes down and he's screaming like he just stepped on a landmine. Dude, writhing in pain. Seriously, you would think he's dying, right? Like it was straight out of a war movie. No more than 15 seconds later, he's jogging back down the field.
Was this? I saw a tweet about some guy who was doing that, and then there was a goal scored. He jumped up and was celebrating. I didn't actually watch the video because I'm just like,
it wouldn't be that one because they didn't score any goals.
Okay,
but
seems like a common thing though.
Yeah, soccer. Yeah, but this one was out of control. Like I'm thinking, I'm going to see the replay, and he's just gonna, his legs are going to be, his shins are going to be at a 90-degree angle.
Yeah,
but they weren't. He was fine. Walked right off. Anyway, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL strategy show, ownership and top stacks edition. Fun show ahead of us today. Ownership really spread out for a 12-game slate. And I'll tell you right now, especially, if you guys are subscribers or if you guys are premium subs over at Stokastic, you may have already looked. And, this is in flux throughout the week. It can change. The top stack tool has never been so flat as far as top stack probability goes, at least not this season that I can remember. A lot of high scoring games, a lot of 50+ totals, a lot of fun to get into for this one. I'm Dave Loughran at Loughy_D, LOUGHY_D on the Twitters, joined by Neil Orfield, the Showdown Shaman, but also dabbles in the main slate streets quite a bit. at Neil or at Player Q DFS. My apologies. What's going on, man?
Not a whole lot. Yeah, I'm looking at the top stacks. I think we've had 3 different weeks this year that during these Wednesday shows. I don't think it's been the same on my Saturday show, but on the Wednesday shows, we've had a top stack with a 100 rating in the top stack school. The Dolphins twice, and I think there was another week where there was a different team. This week, the top stack rating is Jacksonville with a 72 rating. So, like you say, it's just much flatter than we've seen in some other weeks. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, man. It'll be a fun slate to break down. I just got this. Do you have an iPhone by any chance?
I do.
Do you listen to music?
I do sometimes. Yes.
Yeah. I got to think it was like a notification. It was called Replay, where you can see how many minutes of everything you listen to. I just tweeted this.
Meshuggah?
Yeah.
I saw it.
Almost
I don't know who that is.
Almost 12,000 minutes. And so I did the math. That's 8 days worth this year that seems like a lot.
That does. Are you doing other stuff while you listen to Meshuggah?
No, I just lay on my floor with my eyes closed. No, yeah, so I started working out again like a year ago, and I have to listen to like Tool, Lamb of God is up there, Vinny Paz, but Meshuggah is, I discovered them not too long ago. Probably my favorite band ever. They blow your mind. You probably would, if you don't like metal, you probably wouldn't like it. I don't really like metal, but I like that. Anyway, I'm thinking 11,700 minutes is a lot.
Yeah, I don't really listen to metal. I even when I work out, like my wife, I've given her my playlist for
what's your workout playlist?
And she's like, "Why do you listen to this while working out?" I'm still just listening to the same like kind of folky, kind of folk pop kind of stuff is sort of my jam. And I just listen to the same stuff when I'm working. Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, sometimes I'll throw in some rap or something.
Like, what do you listen to? Like Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros?
A little bit. I love the Mountain Goats. Is one of my favorite bands.
I don't know the Mountain.
Iron and Wine. Maybe Iron and Wine.
No.
A lot of kind of easy listening type of. I mean, the Mountain Goats aren't really easy listening, but I would describe it mostly as folk pop. Generally, is what I listen to.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I
like some of that. I can get into some of that. I listen to a lot of indie rock as well.
Hozier is a more
You'll have to send me some of them.
Yeah, some good stuff.
But yeah. No, Ben tells me he never listens to music, which is music.
I love listening to music.
Good for the soul.
Yeah,
good for the soul. I'm going to check out the old Mountain Goats as well.
Good stuff.
But,
No Children, probably their most. No. This year is probably their most famous song. I'm going to make it through this year if it kills me. I don't know. It's sort of a little bit more mainstream.
I don't know. I'll check them out.
Yeah, I'll throw you a link.
I'm in my own bubble when it comes to, like, when that whole who was the guy that got killed from, was it Migos?
Yeah, I don't listen to.
Like, I had to look up. I had heard of it. I wasn't sure if it was a big group, like, like the Dirty Dozen from back in the day, or if it was a one person. I really didn't know much. But Adam tuned me in on all that. I'm getting old, Neil.
Me too.
We have our music and we like it.
That's right.
All right. Well,
I think I went to a winery that is owned by the Tool lead singer. Maybe.
Yes.
Is it Tool? Yeah, in Arizona.
Yeah, Maynard. Yep.
My cousin's a huge Tool fan.
They're a great band.
Sent him a picture. Yeah.
It's one of those bands though, like where they're really good if you, and I'll be honest. Most Tool fans annoy the shit out of me because they're just pretentious. There's certain people with certain bands that they're just pretentious, and it's like, if you don't like this, you're an idiot or you're listening wrong. And they're also the people that always, I can guarantee you, they'll always say their least favorite Tool songs are the most popular ones because it's cool to say that your least favorite songs are the ones that everyone else.
Every type of music, I feel like, is kind of that way though.
Yeah, for sure.
The snobbiest fans of every band.
Oh, yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. But this is my wheelhouse because I don't know the snobbiest fans for
right. Yep.
Kesha. But with Tool, like, there's a song called The Pot, right? It's one of the greatest songs ever made. So anyone that tells you that it's not that they don't like that song, they're lying. It's fantastic. But yeah, Tool's one of those bands you have to kind of really listen because there's so, like, the time signatures and everything is really weird and different. And a lot of people don't like that. I get it. But
I'll give it a listen.
Give it a listen. I'll give you a couple songs to kind of wet your beak. You can't just dive straight into the deep end,
Yeah.
12 games. Interesting slate. And we'll start with the running backs. For those of you guys new to the show, welcome. We start with running backs. We work our way through the skill positions. We don't go deep into what quarterbacks, because Ben and I did that yesterday. Plus, top stacks segment is going to cover all of that anyway, right? We're going to get into the top stacks. All of that involve quarterbacks. Let's do a little review here as well. But before we do, hit that thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Subscribe to the channel. If you're listening after the fact, leave a comment down below. If you're listening in podcast form, we'd love to have you leave a rating review. More than anything, subscribe to the podcast. Tell your friends about the show, whether it's YouTube, podcast, Spotify, wherever it is you listen. Follow Neil on Twitter, myself. And if you want to join, hit join down below. Free super chats each month, the custom emojis, the sweet badges, and the other stuff that we do along the way for all of our members. Week 12 review, Alex Baker. We're almost here to talk about Alex Baker shipping it. Now, he did take down the spy for $100,000. So awesome stuff. Awesome stuff there. Single entry. That's a great contest. $100 single entry. That's a great contest each week. But did you see the lineup for the Millie Maker winner?
I'm looking at it right now on your run sheet. I had not actually looked at it prior to this. Are we seeing Kyler Murray with his only stack as James Conner? Am I reading
correct?
This right?
with no run back.
Yeah, that's not my favorite.
I mean, it was and listen, weird things. Oh, another thing. Did you know that, again, this was his only entry? How many times have we seen that this year? I swear.
Mean, good for him. That's awesome.
It's insane,
I'd
right?
love to see that.
For those of you guys, and Tyler, can you bring this up? For those of you guys that are unfamiliar with the winning lineup, we could do other contests, but sometimes it's just fun to look at what won the Millie. Oftentimes it's a lotto ticket, but yeah. Kyler Murray, 7%, James Conner, 10. Like Neil said, that was the only connection there. Josh Jacobs, monster game, huge overtime run. Chris Godwin, Garrett Wilson, Zay Jones, Mark Andrews at 17% had 11 fantasy points. Treylon Burks and the Jets. Now, Neil, did you see that Treylon Burks touchdown by any chance?
Oh, the recovery in the end zone?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was great.
Sometimes you need things to go your way. And this fella certainly did, but congratulations to you. I wanted to hit on Alex's lineup real quick, though.
Yeah.
Because this is something I think where you're going to have a tough time doing this as a hand builder, because it just in your head, it's difficult to do to execute something like this. But you line up with Cruncher, depending on the type of rules you're setting in there, you can end up with lineups like this, especially with concentrated target shares. Alex had Pirine and T. Higgins with no Burrow, right? He also had Godwin and Rashad White with no Brady. His stack was Mike White and Garrett Wilson with no run back, which I respect, which I love, because you didn't need the run back with Chicago and Trevor Siemian. But how about that, right? A skinny stack, and then two. They weren't even secondary stacks. This was just two players, wide receiver, running back from the same team, with two different teams.
Yeah, so that is a lineup that I would typically allow in my set, except for I mostly do double stacks. I don't think that I would have single stacked with Mike White. I didn't really worry about it because I wasn't playing Mike White last week. It's a really interesting lineup. I see Marco Samparo saying run backs are overrated. I don't know. I think run backs are properly rated. Like I don't think that any of us tell you that you need to have a run back. The part that I didn't like about the Millie Maker winning lineup is the no primary stack with the receiver. Just the stack with the running back is the only part that I don't love. But I mean, it obviously worked out, and James Conner is involved in the passing game. So I don't totally hate it either. It's not like, he ran out a naked Patrick Mahomes, where it's like, how do you see this working out? I think that this lineup, it worked out the way that you would hope that it worked out. So I'm okay with not having run backs in your lineup. I don't think that this is a lineup that I would have. I know that this is not a lineup that I would have gotten to, just because it's very difficult to hit a 9-leg parlay, which is kind of what you're hoping for if you're not doing any kind of correlation with your quarterback. So the reason that we like stacking the quarterback is that you are reducing the size of the things you need to get right. By the bigger the stack, the less you need to. I mean, to some extent, that after a couple 2-3 receiving options, then it gets to be a little bit overdone. But in general, the stack reduces the number of things you need to get right. And then the bring back, if you're hoping for a shootout, that reduces it even more. So that's the reason we do the bring back, is because there's correlation. There's positive correlation between, the options from the other team with the quarterback on your team, because you need the other team to be scoring for the quarterback to be continuing to throw late in the game. So I think that it's, not everybody does run backs. I don't think you need to do run backs, but I think that it's a helpful correlation piece in some circumstances.
No doubt. All right, let's talk about the running back position. Josh Jacobs coming off a career game. He's having a career season. I mean, the guy has been outstanding. I think he's got like almost 1,150 yards or something on the ground this year. He's been good as a pass catcher. He is the do everything back that we were hoping for in Las Vegas. He's at 20%. Then you have Eckler. The top of this position, though, just looking at ownership right now specifically, McCaffrey, I'll tell you the truth, man. When I look at this and know that Elijah Mitchell's out, I'm still not convinced that you're just not going to see, Jordan Mason come in and get some of the work behind McCaffrey. It seems like there's a concerted effort here to make sure that McCaffrey is not completely worn down. And after Mitchell went down, Jordan Mason saw a decent amount of opportunity. So just from an ownership standpoint, even though McCaffrey's only getting, what's he at?
10%.
What is he?
10.5%.
10%. That's still, I think, a decent amount in a spot like this. Derrick Henry at 13%. Keep an eye on Jordan Davis. If Jordan Davis plays, they just opened the 21-day practice window. That can make a difference. If he's out, tough matchup for the Philadelphia Eagles. How do you approach the top end of chalky? And I'll put chalky in quotes here because nothing's insane like it was last week.
Right. We don't have any real chalk here. So actually, I listened to your show with Ben yesterday, heard that neither of you really love Christian McCaffrey. I think I like him better than you guys do on this slate, just because I think that it's a game where it could shoot out. Like, obviously the Niners have a tough defense, which makes it harder on the Dolphins, harder to see the game shooting out. But it's got a 46.5 implied team total, two great offenses. And I think that the spot against the Miami defense is pretty good for Christian McCaffrey just in a vacuum. And then you add in the potential shootout kind of game environment. Christian McCaffrey is going to be involved as a rusher. He'll be involved in the passing game. The Dolphins are 25th in the league against the pass in terms of pass DVOA, Football Outsiders. And then they are 12th against the rush. So a little bit tougher against the rush, but still kind of middle of the pack against the rush. Not great against the pass. So I think that Christian McCaffrey just should have opportunities. And, I think that you're right. The fact that we saw Jordan Mason get some opportunities in the last game probably is an indication that you're right, that they're going to try to limit McCaffrey to some extent. But I do think, they want to win games, and this is going to be a tougher game than some of their games. And I think they understand that Christian McCaffrey is their most talented back, and the gap is wider than it would have been if Eli Mitchell was playing. So I kind of think that I expect McCaffrey to get, a good amount of the workload. And I'm not saying that you're saying he's not that he's going to be splitting 50-50, but I think that he's, they understand he's their primary back. I'm a little bit, I'm higher on McCaffrey than I think you are this week against this Dolphins defense.
I think that's really fair reasoning for sure. No, I mean, in a game that, 3.5 point spread, relatively high scoring for a 49ers game, a potent offense on the other side for the Miami Dolphins. I get it. The only thing for me is that he's just still very expensive. So we'll see.
No, that's true.
It could be a huge, Austin Eckler is not getting that much more ownership. He's in a game that has a 50+ point total. His target share in these type of games has just been out of control. Last week, he only rushed the ball 5 times, but he had 15 targets.
Yeah.
15 of which, by the way, almost all of them are going to be catchable when you're catching the ball at the line of scrimmage. It's always a spot for me where you look at Eckler and you go, all right, well, no matter how he gets it, he's going to get it from a volume standpoint. And we know that targets are more valuable for running backs than carries are. We'd like to see both, of course, but as long as he's on the field, you're always going to get the opportunities from Austin Eckler. And this is against a bad defense in Las Vegas.
Yeah, that's kind of why I tend to think the stat air yards is a bit overrated, because then it's like, okay, you're throwing the ball far, he threw it 40 yards to this receiver and the receiver didn't catch it. And you're going to give him credit anyway. Well, that's a tough catch to pass to catch. So that's why, I think that air yards tend to get overrated, because, Austin Eckler not seeing a ton of air yards when he's getting these 5-yard dump offs, but those are the most catchable passes in the game. And
it's more cumulative though. Like if you go, man, he had 180 air yards last game. If it's a bad quarterback, it doesn't matter. Like it's just the prayer yards, right? But yeah, I think that's more applicable though if you're talking wide receivers and tight ends, right?
Yeah, that is true. But yeah, so running backs like Austin Eckler might have 75 air yards in a game, but it's because he's been targeted 5 yards an attempt for 15 times. So it's I guess for running backs maybe it's a little bit less useful. But yeah, Austin Eckler is just one of those guys that that there are game scripts where they just over and over will pass it to him short. He's always got that high upside, and in a matchup with the Raiders, looks great. The Raiders are 32nd against the pass, 23rd against the rush in terms of DVOA. It's a great spot, and that should be a very close game. So I like Eckler quite a bit in this matchup. I like both sides of the matchup. I mean, you brought up Josh Jacobs already. This is a great spot for both running backs in this game. The Chargers are 29th against the rush. Yeah, it's a great spot. These are going to be two of my favorite running backs on the slate. And then, of course, we have to factor in ownership. This is the ownership show. We actually have Eckler coming in a little bit over-owned, 18% projected ownership, 12% chance to be an optimal. It's, again, a spot where I still think, I'm going to like playing him at 18% ownership. Maybe I won't get to the field, but I think that it's a totally fine number. I think it is a great spot for Austin Eckler. Obviously, a little bit of negative leverage. So maybe you want to come in slightly under the field, but still a great spot. And then Josh Jacobs actually getting 20% ownership, 19% chance of being optimal. So he's very slightly negative leverage on Josh Jacobs. Just the volume has been there, and he clearly has skills that we were kind of missing for a couple of years there. I wasn't seeing him as this elite level running back, and now he's kind of showing off why he was a high draft pick. Looks great. I like both the backs in this matchup. And then, of course, we can talk about Derrick Henry against your Eagles. Do you think Jordan Davis is just the reason the Eagles have been struggling against the run recently? Like earlier in the year, I thought that they were a great defense, and lately it just feels like teams are just running all over him.
It's twofold, right? So on one hand, Jordan Davis is a behemoth, clearly clogs that up, right? It makes a big, big difference when he's not in there, especially because you got a guy like Fletcher Cox who, he's in the twilight of his career, and you can't have him out there for a ton of snaps. The other thing, though, the other significant aspect of this Eagles defense was, if you look at the games to open the year, like the first however many games of the season, they were playing with a massive lead going into halftime. So teams had no choice but to resort to the run or the pass and abandon the run game. So we saw like Houston on that Thursday night football game, they were more than willing to just try to run the football as much as they could to keep the ball out of the Eagles' hands. Once the Eagles started scoring and pouring in the points, they had to abandon it. They fell behind, lost by double digits. Washington, the only loss the Eagles have. Washington ran the ball 49 times. That really is the recipe here. So if you can get it going early on against the Eagles, it's going to help. But as we've seen, like if they get up early, you have no choice but to start throwing the football. So it's twofold. But Jordan Davis, if he's back, that would still make a huge difference. Yeah, no doubt about it.
Tennessee loves to run the football though anyway. Like, do you even think if they do get behind 2 touchdowns in the third quarter, is Tennessee going to abandon the run? Like it would have to be pretty drastic for Tennessee to really want to abandon the run, right?
Sure, but then the Eagles can play it differently is what I'm saying.
True.
You know what I mean? Just like take away all of the big plays. If Tennessee wants to run the clock, picking up, 8-10 yards at a time on the ground, yeah, they can do that. I just think it changes the complexion of the entire game. Now, I'm not convinced that the Eagles are going to go up early either. I'm not saying that, but I'm with you. Jordan Davis, if he's back and he's not limited, they're not going to. Jordan Davis rotates in and out. He's not going to play a million snaps anyway, but he'll play a lot of rundowns. That makes a difference to me, no doubt about it, because we've seen teams when they key in on Derrick Henry, they have been able to slow him down in the run game lately.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, when they can just focus on the run, it's a lot easier to stop a running back, even if it's Derrick Henry, if you can just focus on the run and not have to worry about the passing game. Which, I mean, it's, with Tannehill back, the passing game is a little bit more of a threat. But yeah, Derrick Henry looks great. 13% projected ownership, 16% chance of being optimal. A little bit of positive leverage. I think he's the only among the higher salary guys. He's the only one who actually has some positive leverage. So I'm interested in Derrick Henry, and it's not the best matchup in the world against the Eagles, but they are a little bit of a run funnel. So it is a decent spot for Derrick Henry, even in a game that they are expected to lose.
All right. Talk to me about a couple of these guys as well. I'll give you a few that I like and love to hear some that you're feeling, whether it's, 10, 11, 12% ownership or lower owned guys. One that I at least find interesting. I don't know how much I'm going to get to right now. It's pretty crowded up top, but Nick Chubb, if he really is only like 6-7%, and if Deshaun Watson gets popular throughout the week against his former team, narrative driven shit, Nick Chubb, this could just end up being a game where Nick Chubb carries the ball 23 times and has 3 touchdowns for 150. Entirely possible. Another one, whether Aaron Rodgers plays or not, he says he got good news and that he expects to, but it's player speak. We'll see.
Yeah.
I like Aaron Jones quite a bit in this spot against a putrid Chicago defense on all fronts. Those are a few guys that I really do. A couple guys, I should say, Nick Chubb and Aaron Jones that I like a lot. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on Joe Mixon in a 52.5 total game as well at 7%.
Yeah, it's interesting that the NFC North running backs haven't done better this year because all of the NFC North teams are so bad against the run. The Lions are terrible against the run. The Bears, the Packers, the Vikings are mediocre to, they're 16th in terms of DVOA against the run. So
just Jamal
they have
Williams.
Improved. Yeah, it's like just none of these guys have really done much other than Jamal Williams. To
13 touchdowns.
Yeah, he's getting there through touchdowns, basically alone.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I love this game between the Packers and the Bears. I feel like you can kind of target basically any side of it, except for I probably don't want to. If maybe I would play, maybe I consider Jordan Love if Aaron Rodgers. I don't know. That's something that I have to think about a little bit more. But you can definitely play all the running backs from this game. I think Aaron Jones definitely interesting. I don't know. I've so many times gone to AJ Dillon in these spots where it's like a great matchup and nobody's going to go there. I might fall for it again, but yeah, Aaron Jones at we've got him at 6,900, 12% ownership, 11% chance of being optimal. It's a great spot. They're probably going to want to be running the ball more without. I'm kind of assuming that Aaron Rodgers is going to be out, so I think that it's going to be the Packers are going to be focusing on the run even more so than they have throughout the year. So I think you're right. Aaron Jones looks great at 6,900, and then under that assumption that they're going to want to run the ball more. I'm gonna fall for the AJ Dillon trap once again. He's 5,600, coming in at 1.3% projected ownership, with a 1.9% chance of being optimal. So we actually have some positive leverage on AJ Dillon this week. But at that price tag, I think both of these Packers running backs are playable and guys that I might even want to be a little bit above the field on. But then on the other side of the game, David Montgomery looks fantastic as well. With Khalil Herbert now out, we've got David Montgomery coming in at 11% projected ownership with a 24% chance of being optimal. So he's, I think, the most positively leveraged running back on the entire slate. I like all the running backs in that game. Joe Mixon, we've got a little bit of negative leverage. We've got him coming in at 7.2% projected ownership, 4.7% chance of being optimal. He is 7,100. I think that Joe Mixon, a little bit of negative leverage. It's not the most negatively leveraged player we've seen. Obviously, a matchup against the Chiefs. You'd think the Bengals probably don't want the Chiefs to have the ball that often. You think they'd probably want to try to keep it a lower scoring game, kind of ground it out. I don't know that that's the approach they're going to take, but maybe early on, at least, they try to feed Joe Mixon just to kind of slow the game down, give Kansas City less chances to just put the game out of hand. So I kind of like the call. Chiefs 18th against the rush, 18th against the pass. It's a decent spot for Joe Mixon, and you would think that they're going to want to run the ball. So I like that call. Yeah, if they can, right? That's the thing. I think Mixon at that ownership is really interesting, though. I don't think it changes all that much. I just don't think he's going to be that popular with so many other good options out there. It's not the easiest game, or matchup, but he's interesting. Here's my one concern with Montgomery, right? If
if Fields is out, and I think this is still in question. He's day to day. He has a chance to play. We'll see. Eberflus said he's day to day and he's getting better, but what do we know at this point? It's still early in the week. If Trevor Siemian starts again, this is going to be a spot where I probably fade not only the pass catchers, but also David Montgomery, or if it's Peterman. Here's why. We saw the Packers. I said this on my Odd Shopper video against the Eagles when I do the picks for every game. Check it out. It comes out every Friday for the Sunday night game with the Eagles and the Packers. The Packers did a good job of containing Derrick Henry. But then, Tannehill had a nice game. You can't do that with the Eagles on the ground. And granted, I know all Packers fans just hate their defensive coordinator right now and want him gone. But you can't do that with them because they can beat you through the air. They can beat you with the option. They can beat you with Hurts' legs. They can beat you with Sanders' legs. Right? They can beat you on the deep ball, as we saw on the Quez Watkins touchdown. There's so many different ways they can do that. With Chicago, I'm pretty sure that the Green Bay Packers can completely sell out to stop anything David Montgomery's trying to do and just be like, all right, no Darnell Mooney, maybe no Justin Fields. Let's make Trevor Siemian or Nathan Peterman and Chase Claypool and Cole Kmet beat us. That would feel like the way to get it done if you're trying to win a game and just completely stifle an opposing offense.
Yeah, that's a good point. Without Justin Fields, and I had said that I like all sides of this game, but I'm probably not playing Trevor Siemian. That probably does. The passing game, at least, is very reliant on Justin Fields playing. It does. I agree with you. It makes it a tougher spot for David Montgomery if he is playing with Trevor Siemian, because you're right. The Packers can just entirely commit to stopping the run, force the passing game to beat them. But just looking at our simulations, it looks like I'm curious who we have in at quarterback. Actually,
I don't think we have Fields in.
Okay, so he looks great in our simulations, even with Fields out. We have trying to see if I can. Yeah. Oh no, we do have Fields in.
Okay.
We have Fields in with 3.2% projected ownership, 3.4% chance of being optimal. Both of those numbers seem very low to me. So maybe we have Fields in, but maybe a little bit nicked up. I don't know. I don't know how you how to interpret that exactly, because both those numbers seem low to me for a healthy Fields against Green Bay.
Agreed. Oh, dude, if Fields is in, I love him.
Yeah, I mean he'd be a great play, especially because he is. I mean they're worse against the run, but it's true for Fields as well. Fields is going to run all over the Packers if he is playing, and not limited. That would be a great spot for Fields. So
we just saw Hurts rack up 157. Right, he had 100 yards in the first quarter. Maybe they try and figure out how to stop Fields in that sense. But man, he could run wild in this game if he plays.
Yeah, I would love Fields if he plays in this game. But yeah, I still think maybe the boom bust tool oversells David Montgomery a little bit, because you do need to factor in those kinds of scenarios where they're probably going to be focused on stopping the run, but still David Montgomery just looks fantastic from a tools perspective. And I'd certainly want to be above the 11% the field is getting to on David Montgomery in this spot. And then, the other one that you brought up was Nick Chubb. Yeah, definitely an interesting spot. 7.3% projected ownership, 4% chance of being optimal against the Texans defense that is 30th against the rush. The Browns have a 27 implied team total. And yeah, you're right. It could be, we'll have to see where the Deshaun Watson ownership ends up on Sunday, but it could be a great leverage spot as well. You factor that in on top of just the looks like a great spot in general. So, and I think I just read that Nick Chubb had over 80% or at least 80% of the snap share in this last game. I might be getting the stats slightly wrong, but it was like the first time since he's been teamed up with Kareem Hunt and both have been active. It was the highest percentage of the snap share or maybe opportunities that he's seen. So it's kind of feels like this year the Browns are going away from Kareem Hunt a little bit and just feeding Nick Chubb a little bit more. So with 27 implied total, I'd definitely be interested a bit in Nick Chubb. Somebody just brought up Dameon Pierce in chat as well. Also a great spot for Dameon Pierce going up against this Browns defense that's 31st against the rush in terms of DVOA, and he looked good in the tools. We've got Dameon Pierce coming in at 12.9% projected ownership, 15% chance of being optimal. So yeah, also a great spot for Pierce. One other person that was brought up in the chat is Delvin Cook. Now, let me see what we have his ownership at. Yeah, we've got Cook at 6.1% ownership with a 6% chance of being optimal. I'd have some interest in Delvin Cook if he's getting the kinds of opportunities he's been getting. It's a tough spot against the Jets, really tough defense, but the Vikings still have a 24.25 implied team total. Moderate interest for me. Would you have any interest in Delvin Cook against this Jets defense?
I mean, not really.
I was kind of thinking the ownership would be lower, to be honest.
Me too. I think there's just other ways that I can go here. It's not that I hate Dalvin Cook in this spot, but there's a lot of good running back plays. And listen, you and I we're doing this live on a Wednesday morning.
Right.
Josh Jacobs, okay, calf strain. He's not expected to practice basically most of the week. He could be out. So if Josh Jacobs is out, now you're talking about, and I'm just going to run down some of these guys for you, for those of you who are, just kind of prepping for the week, because this is important. Even though we're talking ownership, it's not going to be reflected in our ownership tool, but, try and give you the information we get. Zamir White is going to be the chalk of all chalk. He will be chalkier. I think he will be chalkier than anyone we saw last week. And that says a lot. Maybe, you know what? Sometimes I get hyperbolic here, Neil, but at minimum salary, I think he would be pretty popular. And the reason I'm taking a step back is because, Amir Abdullah will get opportunities as well. I think that it would be Zamir White who gets the groundwork for the most part, but you might see a split there. So I'll step back on that. Amir Abdullah is going to get some opportunities as well, but both of those guys are definitely going to be in consideration. If Michael Carter, who is day-to-day with the low ankle sprain, ends up sitting, then you've got Zonovan Knight, who they're very high on right now. 14 attempts last game, 17 total looks on 3 targets and 14 carries. That's a significant one. Benny Snell might come into play if you have Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris out. So those are some big spots that we're going to be paying attention to that will change everything about this slate in the event that some of these guys or all of these guys, which is definitely possible, are absent.
Yeah, Zonovan Knight, a guy that I had not heard of prior to Sunday, and I just spent $60 fab in my keeper league on Zonovan Knight. I think that he looks really interesting. I was just reading about him. James White was inactive because they wanted to inject some life into the offense, and they did that with Zonovan Knight. That was their plan, from what I read. The reason that James Robinson was inactive and they went to Zonovan White instead is because they wanted to give him a shot to kind of boost the offense a little bit, and he did a great job. So I think this is what I've read as well. Looks like he has earned a role in the offense regardless of whether Michael Carter is active. I would still expect Zonovan Knight to play behind Michael Carter if Carter is active, but in the event that Michael Carter is out, I would have definite interest in Zonovan Knight. It's a very highly volatile situation with Zonovan White. We have no idea exactly what his role will be going forward, whether he'll be any good once, defenses have actually watched him play a little bit. But at least for this week, I would have interest in Zonovan White against the Vikings defense, which is 16th against the rush this year, 27th against the pass. A pretty good spot for Zonovan White, who I would expect to be, I don't know. Do you think he would be low owned if Michael Carter is ruled out, or do you think the field is going to pivot to Zonovan White after a pretty good game last week?
I think White will be. I think he will be relatively high owned. Yeah, I do. Okay. Because when you look at this Jets team, you're going, okay, they have no Breece Hall. He's done that sucked, man. He was clear path for offensive rookie of the year. No question about it. He's a beast.
Oh yeah.
But now we have to see, like James Robinson probably active in this game. That's going to throw a wrinkle into it. So I think it will suppress ownership enough, but Zonovan Knight came in and played almost 50% of snaps. Ty Johnson, we know who Ty Johnson is, right? Like we know what type of player he is. I think we'll probably get some reports on who's going to start at running back. I could see Zonovan Knight not being as popular as he should be because people have some fear based on this being a potential committee. But I could also see this being at his price, somebody that makes a big difference. But if you think about it, there's not going to be one backfield. If Jaylen Warren and Najee are out, if Michael Carter's out, if Josh Jacobs sits, there's not going to be one of those three backfields where there's a clear-cut option that is expected to get all the work, which I think makes it even more interesting, right?
No, that's a really good point. And it helps that we have so many different situations like this with the running backs coming in, the backups coming in at low prices and sort of unknown situations. I think you're totally right about that. I'm assuming that I guess I just read before the show that Najee Harris did not suffer a significant injury. So maybe he does come back this week, but it's going to be an interesting situation with Pittsburgh for sure. Zonovan Knight, yeah, I mean, the fact that they benched James Robinson and made him inactive last week, and then we saw Zonovan Knight come in and have a great game. I'm assuming that even if James Robinson is active, Zonovan Knight is going to be playing ahead of him this week. Maybe I'm reading the situation wrong, but that seems like the likeliest scenario. The guy who they brought in to inject life into the offense, and then he did just that. I don't know if they're going to be benching him or putting him behind James Robinson this week. We'll see that. I could be reading the situation wrong, but that would be my assumption, is that Zonovan Knight would still get the bulk of the carries. And then, yeah, you can stack some Z's with Zamir as well. He will look pretty interesting if we get the news that Josh Jacobs is out. I don't think he is. I think that from what I've read, he's going to be limited in practice all week, but I think that's just sort of resting him for the games. But if he is out, I'm with you. I think Zamir White would be very interesting. And yeah, I think that he would probably be the primary back. Amir Abdullah, I don't think would step in and take over that role. I think he's going to continue to be the third down back. Of course, I don't know for sure. Maybe he could play a bigger role than he has, but I think both Abdullah and Zamir White could be interesting if Josh Jacobs is out, which is not what I'm expecting, but you never really know what's going on with these teams. Yeah, it is interesting that all of these backfields, especially if we get the news that Najee is out and Jaylen Warren is in, it'll be interesting to see how it breaks down for Pittsburgh. I would think that Jaylen Warren would step in and be the primary back for the Steelers, but Benny Snell had a great game the last game. Anthony McFarland played a pretty big role out of nowhere. So it's a lot of kind of unknown situations.
Very cloudy, yeah. And for what it's worth, I think Jacobs plays too, but it's definitely worth monitoring throughout the week. Sure. There's no doubt about that. All right, let's talk about wide receivers. Before we do, though, shout out to our sponsor, Prize Picks. You know it. I know it. Nobody's giving out. No site can you sign up right now where you're getting a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum, $120 value, and you're getting up to $100 first match deposit bonus. Prize Picks is blowing up for a reason. People love playing there because, first of all, it's if you're in non-legal betting states, this is, you're easily your best alternative where you're just building lineups with. They might look like parlays to some people. That's what you're doing. You're building lineups, parlays. Not supposed to say that, but I just want you guys to understand the format here of up to five props, just overs or unders, no juice on either side. And if you wanted to build 5 lineups, right? And you go, or five props, and you go, all right, well, I love this NBA prop. I love this NFL one. I like these 2 college football ones and this college basketball one, right? Maybe you have a variety of knowledge across all these sports. Take advantage of that. You can take multi-sport lineups. And if you hit all 5 of them, you're 10Xing. If you hit 4X, unlike traditional books, unlike traditional parlays, if you hit 4 of them out of 5, normally you would the parlay's dead, the lineup's dead. In this case, you're still 2Xing. You even make money back if you hit 3 of 5. They haven't, not just that, they have so many available props that you can't find anywhere else. So it's awesome over at Prize Picks. You should take advantage of it. Use the link. If you want to get the free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum, you want to get everything on our site, all of our tools for every single sport, not just football, but everything. You've seen our Hall of Fame segments. We just had a guy take down 100K yesterday in NBA. Alex, who built all of these tools, just took down 140K between 2 contests for week 12 of the NFL. You want to get these tools, go ahead and use the link in the description or the one that Tyler can throw in the chat, because that is the only way we can track it to make sure that we can get you set up and take advantage of the $100 first match deposit bonus when you sign up and deposit at Prize Picks as well. All right, receivers, let's get into this one. At the top, as far as ownership goes, I was honestly surprised right now, and maybe this changed. I was surprised to see at his price point, Tyreek Hill as second highest. I was surprised with Jamar Chase expected back to see T. Higgins at a similar price point at 16% ownership. Both of those little bit surprising to me. If it stays that way, and I can't imagine it does, give me 4% Jamar Chase. There's no way. Give me the lower owned Jamar Chase at a not that much of an increased price all day long.
Yeah, I think that goes without saying. Jamar Chase is the wide receiver one. He's only $700 more expensive than T. Higgins. In the past, typically we've seen a wider gap there between Chase's price tag and T. Higgins. If Jamar Chase is back, he's the wide receiver one. A lot less incentive to play a 7,200 T. Higgins. T. Higgins is priced as though Jamar Chase is going to be out. So I'd be pretty surprised to see 16% ownership on T. Higgins if Jamar Chase is out. I assume it's weird because we have Jamar Chase in the tools as though he is playing, but I still think that these are going to adjust over time. We'll probably see a little bit different numbers by game time on Sunday. So yeah, if T. Higgins at 16% ownership, I think that would be a pretty easy fade for me. I assume you would not have any interest in T. Higgins at that number.
No, not really. In stacks, sure.
Yeah, I guess now I'm thinking about now they are playing the Chiefs, so I guess it could be just a popular stack. Like we could see both of these guys get a good amount of ownership, and I think it would make sense to me in some stacks. Yeah,
I think we will, but there's no way Jamar Chase it doesn't come in as a more popular, because if Jamar Chase plays and he's good to go, and my assumption is because last week Joe Burrow thought he was going to play in week 12, and he ended up not playing. My guess is they're not bringing this guy back until he is fully healthy and good to go. And if that happens, it's just an assumption, of course, but if that is the case in a game with a 53-point total, yeah, I'll take some Jamar Chase for sure. No questions asked. This game will be interesting, but I got to tell you on the other side, I mentioned this to Ben yesterday, and this is what I'm having trouble with. Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes can easily complete passes to 10 different receivers. And I know last week was unique and that, Pacheco had 20 plus carries. You're not going to see that in most Chiefs games, particularly competitive ones with high scoring. But it is so possible, even without Tony, even without Mecole Hardman, for him to spread the ball around, whether it's Justin Watson, who played 82% of snaps, or Juju. Of course, all of these guys trailing Kelsey, but it's still a team that if they try and take Kelsey out of the game, like Jalen Ramsey basically shadowed Kelsey last week. And Mahomes is like, all right, we'll do it another way. And there's so many ways that they can make that work that the target share is just so much more condensed for so many other teams. How do you approach these wide receivers and the pass catchers for the Chiefs?
Yeah, it is.
I'm
really
asking
tough.
you personally. That wasn't rhetorical.
Yeah, so I've been playing them and just kind of mixing and matching. And, I use Fantasy Cruncher, so I'm not hand building and having to make these individual decisions generally. Sometimes I'll hand build a few lineups, but in general, I just kind of let Fantasy Cruncher give me whoever projects the best. That's a partial truth because I also adjust the projections a little bit because sometimes I want to depends on the ownership, but it's getting tougher and tougher just looking at the numbers that we have on these Chiefs receivers right now. They all look pretty neutral in the tools. We've got Juju at 6.3% ownership, 6.2% optimal. Watson at 3.8% ownership, 4.5% optimal. So he's the one with the most positive leverage. MVS at 3.7% ownership, 3.8% optimal. And then Sky Moore at 2.6, 1.6% optimal. So all these guys, coming in pretty low owned and looking like they're basically as owned as they should be. It is a tough spot. I'm always going to like Patrick Mahomes in a game that could shoot out. And even with it being hard to decide who to play week to week, I think all these guys look. I think Juju, obviously is the wide receiver one of this group. He's also the most expensive by a good amount. So it kind of comes down to how you want to build your roster. I think you could make a Kansas City stack with any of these guys along with Kelsey. I think, they all look reasonably owned. We have seen Sky Moore getting more targets recently, which is promising. And he's only 3,100. So I might be inclined to go there, but honestly, I think MVS at 4,100 again looks pretty good. Watson at 3,200. Just man, these prices seem so low for wide receivers who do get targets in such a dynamic offense. It just so far it feels like every time they get down to the end zone, to the red zone, they just throw it to Kelsey. Like they'll use these guys going downfield and then just give it to Kelsey in the red zone. So we haven't seen a lot of touchdowns out of these receivers, but I still think in a game that has such a high implied team total that could see some fireworks, I'm going to have some interest. Are you, do you see yourself playing any of these wide receivers? I agree with you. It's very hard to break them down beyond, I think Juju is the wide receiver one, but after that, it's tough. Do you have any interest in any of these guys?
It's weird, man. Like last week, Juju played 38% of snaps. I assume for sure that this is just because he was coming back from a concussion and he wasn't really needed. So, how much did that elevate? How much did that elevate Justin Watson's snap count?
Right.
I don't know. I'd say a decent amount, but I would still expect Watson. He played 84% of snaps. I'd still expect him to play a little bit here, but less, like definitely less, because you look, Juju had the concussion in week 10, played 38% of snaps. Watson played 73%. Then Watson played 88%. Juju didn't play in week 11. Week 12, Juju also limited. Watson played 84%. There's no Tony, there's no Hardman, but Watson going back to, week 9, where Kadarius Toney basically didn't play and Hardman did play. Justin Watson played 6%. So I think Justin Watson probably in the 50 to 60% range. Juju snap share comes up. Who knows what the hell you're going to get with MVS from week to week. It's like if you're using Cruncher, you're MMing, and that's different. Like you can just take shots. If you're building only a few lineups, I think it is kind of difficult to try and figure out which of these Kansas City players you want outside of Kelsey.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And you named it with Juju being, I am under the same assumption that you are, that Juju only played 38% of snaps because he was returning from a concussion. They're maybe trying to ease him back in. I still think that he's probably the wide receiver one here, and maybe we're reading it wrong. Maybe these other guys have surpassed him. He hasn't done a ton so far this year, but I assume Juju is still the wide receiver one for Kansas City. But it's a mess with, Sky Moore played 46% of snaps last week. We've got Justin Watson played 84%. He's the one that people are less, the least inclined to play is Justin Watson, I think. MVS played 58. Like these guys all play, none of them are playing 90% of snaps of the guys that people really want to play. So it's tough. What I like about the Kansas City receivers is the price tags, though. It's like, okay, so these guys are, after Juju, any one of them you could consider maybe the wide receiver too. Like they're, and obviously Kelsey, you have to factor in Kelsey as well. But these guys do get targets in a great offense, and they have very low price tags. So it's hard for me not to want to play these Kansas City guys, even though I've been doing it all year and it's been, for the most part, biting me most of the year. None of these guys have had great games like where they're putting up 25, 30 fantasy points. It's pretty rare for these Chiefs receivers, but they also have relatively high floors for their salary. So I think the upside is there, even though we haven't seen it, but it's definitely tough. If you're making one lineup, who would I want to play? It's probably still MVS for me. I hate to say it because he just has not done it at all this year, but he's probably the safest point per dollar. Maybe Sky Moore. It is. I am with you.
It's tough, man. It's really tough
to decide who you want to play here. So maybe I'm talking myself out of it a little bit. If you are just making one lineup, I think that they all make sense to sprinkle in if you're doing several lineups. But yeah, if you're making just one lineup, it definitely is a messy situation. It's not like Miami where it's just like, yep, going to play Waddle and Hill. That's, it is a messy situation. I'm with you there.
It's weird. Yeah. And you know what? Maybe it wins someone a tournament this week. It lost me one, not lost me one. I had a nice lineup, cashed nicely, but could have had, this was in the SPY, the one that Alex won. And I was saying to Ben yesterday, I went into the 4:00 games. Like, do I keep the Mahomes stack? Because it had, the 1 p.m. players had all gone off, and I did. And looking back, I probably shouldn't have. Now, I didn't know Juju was only going to play 38% of snaps, but
right.
It's expensive between Mahomes and Kelsey, and then you're trying for those secondary options. It's tough. Yeah. So you really have to nail it. But a couple other guys I like here. I don't care that Garrett Wilson is 15% and his prices come up. He ran routes on 93% of dropbacks last week in a game that they were in command the whole game. He played 83% of snaps. You assume he plays more. And it definitely runs more routes, not percentage of dropbacks, but just way more routes in a game like this against a good Minnesota offense. He's good. He's legitimately good. And Mike White is clearly an upgrade. I don't care if that was only one game against Chicago. He's clearly an upgrade from Zach Wilson. I like Garrett Wilson. Keenan Allen, of course, in this spot with a big total, high total game against the Raiders in that divisional spot, especially if Mike Williams is out, he stands out. Devontae Adams, I like in the same game. There's a lot of things you can do. And then you have the Seattle receivers. I don't hate them. That line moved from 4.5 to 8 in a day. So yeah, there's some interesting spots here for sure. You're going to have kind of the pick your poisons at wide receiver and running back this week.
Yeah, Garrett Wilson, definitely interesting. We had been seeing him in like the low fours in terms of salary. It was like 4,200, I feel like a couple weeks ago. Maybe I misremember. He's 5,300 now. The price looks right though. We've got him at 14.5% ownership. We still have him optimal 16.4% of the time. So some positive leverage on Garrett Wilson. I didn't love that he only had like 1 or 2 targets in the second half, or I think he just had 1 catch in the second half, which was really annoying for me as somebody who loaded up on Garrett Wilson in best ball. Looked like he was just going to absolutely blow up the slate, and then he just didn't even get to the 100-yard bonus after getting 84 in the first half, I believe.
They didn't need it though.
I know they didn't need it. It was but they threw a touchdown to Elijah Moore. Just kind of Mike White went a different direction after the first half. So yeah, disappointing, but I don't think that that's anything we need to factor in going forward. I don't think that he obviously was not going away from Garrett Wilson because Garrett Wilson disappointed him. So yeah, I think Garrett Wilson at 5,300, 14.5% ownership. I'm going to have probably above the field on Garrett Wilson. Great spot against the Vikings. Definitely interest there. Keenan Allen, depends on if Mike Williams plays to some extent, but we've got Keenan Allen at 14% projected ownership, 7.7% chance of being optimal. It is a game environment that I really like, this Chargers Raiders game. So maybe I'd still go to, I will still go to some Keenan Allen. I think that I don't know exactly how much I'll want to get to. 6,500, the ownership pretty high. We've got negative leverage in the tools, but Keenan Allen's a guy who can rack up, 12 targets in a game. We talked about this with Austin Eckler. Allen also can sometimes just get a ton of pretty short passes, and he's got the upside to break one off. So I do like Keenan Allen quite a bit. Devontae Adams in the same game, 13.2% projected ownership, 10.7% chance of being optimal. I think that could be a game that I'm stacking up. So I think that both of these guys are definitely going to be viable in game stacks. Of course, it gets expensive pretty quickly if you're playing both of them. But I think that there are a lot of pretty decent options. Josh Palmer saved a little bit of money. He's 5,600. We've got him coming in at 7.6% projected ownership, 4.5% chance of being optimal. So negative leverage there, but still a viable play in some game stacks. Have I touched on everybody that you brought up? I think that I may have. Oh, the Seattle receivers. Yeah, we've got Tyler Lockett, 11% ownership, 8% chance of being optimal. Looks okay against the Rams. I guess the Rams are worse against the pass than I thought they were. Right? I feel like that's gotten worse throughout the year.
They did a decent job against Mahomes in the red zone, but he definitely moved the ball pretty easily in between the 20s.
Yeah, they were just failing in the red zone over and over. But I in general, I thought this Rams defense was a little bit better. They are 26th against the pass in terms of pass DVOA, according to Football Outsiders. So it does look like a pretty good spot. It's tough. Probably wouldn't want to do a run back from the Rams though. It's harder to target that game as a stack, the Seahawks, with the Rams on the other side of it. But yeah, definitely some interest in Lockett. Could play some DK Metcalf. What do we have Metcalf at? 6,700, 8.6% projected ownership, 4.5% chance of being optimal. So a little bit of negative leverage on both of those guys, but they're playable. You could at least consider doing a Seattle double stack.
All right. DeAndre Carter too, if Mike Williams is out. He's cheap.
Yep.
Been playing a lot recently. So that is definitely nice. John said, and what's up, John? Nice to see you, man. Said, Lafayette, I'm surprised you're not on AJ Brown. I said, it's because we haven't gotten to some of these low-owned guys yet. Yeah, AJ Brown's an interesting one. He just has to stop trying to break through 9 tacklers to pick up an extra 2 yards once in a while, and he'd stop fumbling. But yeah, look, dominant red zone presence. We know that. This is a pass funnel defense for the Tennessee Titans. There's no denying that. Now, look, I'm not out here saying that Tennessee is a bad defense. They're not. They have a good big defensive front. Interesting team for sure, but they're number 1 in run defense DVOA this year. And that can look a little different against the multi-pronged approach from the Philadelphia with Hurts and in that backfield, but 17th in pass defense DVOA. I do think that if AJ Brown really does come in at 4% or whatever, and I wouldn't be shocked if he is that low, especially because I expect Jamar Chase to come up and so many other top tier receivers. He is interesting. Let's not forget that Pittsburgh game where he blew up was a game where he was like, what, 5% or so owned. I don't love him this week, but I think there's definitely merit to looking at, a cheap or not cheaper, a lower owned option there. And then you just have guys like Debo and Ayuk in this game where nobody, George Kittle, I don't think any of these guys for San Francisco are going to get a lot of ownership. I like Christian Watson at 3% against a horrible Chicago defense. This could be another multi-touchdown game for him. So right now, if I'm pulling some interest in a few guys that are, 7% or lower owned in a lot of these cases.
Yeah, definitely. AJ Brown looks pretty interesting. As you said, it is a little bit of a pass funnel defense in Tennessee. 4.3% ownership seems really low on AJ Brown. The price is up there. The 7,800 a little bit tough, but would it shock anybody to see 100 yards and a touchdown or two? It wouldn't shock me with AJ Brown. Certainly has the talent. So at that little ownership, even at the high price tag, I think I'm willing to pay it. We've got him optimal 5.1% of the time. I wouldn't mind stacking him, maybe a skinny stack with Jalen Hurts. I think it looks really interesting playing some AJ Brown. Who else did you bring up here? I should have sorted by ownership. I have this. No, I do. Okay. Yeah, so AJ Brown definitely somebody who interests me. After AJ Brown, yeah, Christian Watson kind of depends on who's starting at quarterback for the Packers. I don't know that I want to play him with Jordan Love. Of course, we saw him score the big touchdown last week with Jordan Love. So maybe maybe I should have some interest there against this terrible defense. It is at least an interesting spot. So maybe at relatively low ownership. I do kind of have some concern that Christian Watson's ownership is going to come in higher than we expect. I said that on the before the Thursday night game or the Monday night game that the Packers were involved in, that I kind of thought ownership was going to come in higher than we had it projected. And then it did. I think that he is, the sexy rookie name that people want to go to. So I'd be pretty surprised to see Christian Watson at under 3% ownership in a great matchup when he's been so good recently. He scored 5 touchdowns in the past 3 games, something ridiculous like that. So if he is under 3% owned, I would definitely have interest. I would be surprised if that remains that low on Sunday though. So we'll have to monitor where the ownership projections have Christian Watson closer to game time. Also have some interesting Christian Kirk. I guess we didn't talk about him before we pivoted to the low owned guys. I just want to shout out Christian Kirk against the Lions defense, only 6,300, 11.4% projected ownership, 11.7% chance of being optimal. I just want to throw that name out there before we completely move on to these pivots, because I do think that Christian Watson looks very interesting to me. Let me sort here. Deontay Johnson looks pretty good. 7.1%. Oh, you're on mute.
That's weird. I don't even remember doing it. I was saying while I was going to say while you were looking, Christian Watson has 12 receptions over the last 3 games. 6 of them are touchdowns.
I've hated it because I have not been playing. I've been under the field every one of those games, I think. So I've been, it's like, it's clearly unsustainable, but I don't think that the field thinks of it that way. The field just thinks this guy is a touchdown monster. I want to keep playing Christian Watson. And he looks really, like all those touchdowns, he looks really good. He looks fast. He looks like an athletic guy. Yeah. So I get why people want to go there. It's just, he doesn't have quite the volume that you'd like. But at 3% ownership, I would love Christian Watson. I suspect it's going to be higher than that.
Hey, one last thing for you, John, who had asked, what is Sun God's ownership? So what is Amon-Ra St. Brown's ownership? He's actually the highest owned right now in our projections at 21%. Neil, I quickly, where are you at on Amon-Ra St. Brown against the Jags in a high total game inside the dome?
It looks great. Yeah. 21.3% projected ownership, 27.5% chance of being optimal. He's 7,100. He's just been a target machine. He's obviously very talented, and this is a game that has high blow up potential. I mean, I think that I might stack up this game. We'll have to look at the top stack tool a little bit to see how high owned we're expecting these guys to be, Trevor Lawrence and Jared Goff. But I think it's a game that I could certainly target. The Jaguars are 30th against the pass this year, so it's a pass funnel. Not a total pass funnel. It's just kind of not the best defense in general, but I think it's a great spot for Amon-Ra St. Brown, particularly. I definitely have interest there.
Okay. And Adam Baumother said that Zay Jones might feel like point chasing, but he's too cheap. I agree with you, man. He's still averaging almost 8 targets per game. It's not like Zay Jones is just coming off one big game. No, he's had some nice games this year. So
yeah,
I agree.
Our tools agree too. We've got Zay Jones at 6.6% projected ownership, 9.2% chance of being optimal at 4,900. So, and it's a great spot. He gets a lot of targets. Anybody who's getting 8 targets a game playing against the Lions at 4,900, I have interest.
Hey, one thing before we close this show out with tight ends and top stacks, you have until Sunday to take advantage of this, especially for those of you who are pissed. You're like, dude, Prize Picks isn't available to me. What's going on? I never get anything good. No good deed goes unpunished around these ways. Well, that's not true, because BetMGM, you're getting $200 no-brainer by just depositing. All it has to be is $10. More if you want. All it has to be $10. With the World Cup going on, you only have till Sunday for this promo, right? Take advantage of it. Take $10, put it on any pre-match money line, okay? Even if you don't like, plenty of people like, who watches soccer? Doesn't matter. I mean, you like money, don't you? Take $10, put on any pre-match money line. Now it'll say if any team scores a goal, then it converts to $200. It doesn't actually have to happen. No, every game could go 0-0 and it's still $200. The best part about it, I'm trying to tell you guys, the best part about this, I've been saying it for a week now, is if your bet wins, you still get paid out on the bet and you get the $200 promo bonus or promo money. That is amazing, because if your bet loses, doesn't matter. You still get the 200. If your bet wins, and let's say you bet a big dog, you're cashing in on a $10 or however much bet, winning all of that money, and you're getting the additional 200. So you're like, all right, I just took $10 and now I have a legitimate bankroll on another site where I can shop different odds, where I can take advantage of it without having to actually put a lot or hardly any of my own money into it. Worst case scenario, you lose your bet, you get your 200, you lose all that. Your downside is $10. You're literally down $10. That's all that your downside is. The upside is you run it up, you win your bet, you get to 200, you keep winning, go on a mega heater, and you're turning it into 4 or 5 figures. So if BetMGM's in your state, take advantage of it. It's done on Sunday, and we'd love to see you over there. $10 into 200. Just got to use the link in the description, as you know, or the one that Tyler can throw in the chat. All right, Neil, let's quickly wrap up tight ends here so we can talk about top stacks. I don't want to go forever, but Kelsey, Freiermuth, Mark Andrews, all above 10%. And then just, there's not a lot at the cheaper end. I told you, I do have some interest in Kittle at 5%. Gerald Everett at 4% in a high-scoring game. Kmet, if Justin Fields plays with no Darnell Mooney, is interesting. And then Foster Moreau at 7%. I think you could throw Tyler Conklin in there as well. But I'm mixing and matching a tight end this week, and I don't think you have to worry too much about ownership.
Yeah, no, none of these guys getting a ton of ownership. Our highest chance to be an optimal tight end on the entire slate, Pat Freiermuth, just 4,300 against the Falcons defense. Looks very good at 10.5% ownership, 16.4% chance to be an optimal. As you said, though, none of these guys getting a ton of ownership. You can kind of play whoever you want to, whoever fits into your build. I like Freiermuth quite a bit, but then also, as you said, Kelsey, Andrews, both look great. Hawkinson just been a monster, getting a target monster since he joined the Vikings. Gonna always like TJ Hawkinson at 5,200, getting 5.3% ownership, 7% chance of being optimal. Not the best matchup in the world against the Jets, so don't love that quite as much, but it's a fine spot for a guy who's been getting a lot of targets. George Kittle, you brought up, just 5,000, cheaper than TJ Hawkinson. Man, that's a little bit of surprise, but 5.2% ownership on Kittle, 8.1% chance of being optimal, like that. Yeah, I think the high end of tight end is pretty interesting this week. We've got more options, pay up or kind of mid pay up options this week. All look pretty good.
Who's your favorite option right now at tight end?
Good question. Man, Gerald Everett, I've been playing him and he has not been working out for me. Still interesting once again at 4,400 against the Raiders in that matchup. We've got him at 3.7% ownership, 6.5% optimal, but I think I just have to go with the tools on this one. Pat Freiermuth against the Falcons, 4,300. He's been getting a ton of targets, very talented. It's probably just Freiermuth for me. How about you?
Yeah, I like Freiermuth. I like some of these, 3K options though. And I like Kittle. But if we're talking, best option just as far as our tools go, Freiermuth, Kelsey, Mark Andrews, the three, but a lot of pivots I like down there as well. All right, let's talk about top stacks. And hey, appreciate all you guys hanging out with us. Hit the thumbs up if you haven't done so yet. Take a single second to atone for your sins, my friends. Help us appease the YouTube overlords here. You know the drill. Only takes a second, and it helps us a ton. So appreciate you in advance. Top stacks. We open the show with this. You have Cincinnati, LA, Kansas City, and Minnesota, all between 9 and 9.8% top stack probability. Philly 6.6 top stack probability. Jags 6.5. Miami 6.4. Detroit 6.2. Las Vegas 6.2. Cleveland 6%. And then his ownership, as far as ownership goes with quarterbacks, Herbert 9.4, 2 and 9. Geno Smith 8.7. Patrick Mahomes 7.3. Watson 6.7. Burrow 6.4. Lawrence 6%. Derek Carr 5.6. There's not an insane amount of separation as far as top stack percentage goes, or quarterback ownership, or top rated stacks go this week. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's really flat in terms of how much we like these different stacks. It's more interesting than we tend to see at least 2 or 3 teams that really stand out amongst the crowd and look great compared to everybody else. Not really seeing that this week. This is a week where I think that there are, it's almost more interesting because you have more options. None of them look amazing, but a lot of pretty good options, I would say, this week. A lot of places that I'm interested in going. Just looking at the top of the ratings, which factor in ownership, chance of being the top value stack, chance of being the top stack in general. The top 2 teams are Jacksonville and Detroit. So that's a matchup that the tools love this week. Not getting that 100 rating that we got on the Dolphins a couple times this year, but 72 rating on Jacksonville, 65 rating on Detroit. I think that both of those stacks look pretty interesting. That's a game that I'm going to want to be stacking up a bit. And then also we can, that Chargers versus Raiders game is going to be pretty interesting, both within the top 10. We're projecting Herbert for 9.4% ownership, 9.8% chance of being the top stack. And then we've got Derek Carr coming in at 5.6% ownership, 6.2% chance of being the top stack. So I think both of those are great games to stack up: Jacksonville, Detroit, and then Las Vegas and the Chargers. And then also Cincinnati, Kansas City among the top stacks. We've got Burrow coming in at 6.4% projected ownership, 9.8% chance that Cincinnati has the top stack. And then on the other side of it, Mahomes coming in at 7.3% ownership, 9.6% chance of Kansas City being the top stack. Of course, as we've talked about, that's a little bit tougher because you need to figure out who the stack is that you want to play there. But still some positive leverage there. And it's also very expensive. That's just the Kansas City stack, just a 4.4% chance of being the top value stack. So need to factor that in as well. But a lot of good options here.
There really are. I'm just looking at this thinking, you don't really have to get super contrarian this week with stacks. Just looking at some of these options, do I want to get contrarian with? Okay, let me see. Like, let's take a look at who's low owned with Tennessee stacks, even without Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. No, Denver, absolutely not. You just can't trust. You can't trust whether you want to say it's Wilson or Hackett. Can't trust them. This team is terrible. They're terrible. The defense the defense probably wants to quit at this point. You saw yelling on the sidelines at Wilson last game. Green Bay's kind of interesting. They're kind of interesting because Chicago, man, that defense is as they're probably the worst defense. I said this to Ben, probably the worst defense in the league right now. Yeah. So that's kind of enticing if there's just
would you have interest regardless of quarterback there? Love or Rodgers?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I would prefer Jordan Love probably. Yeah. But if Rodgers, because I know Rodgers, he's like, oh, I'll play, and he's not healthy, but he was throwing some dimes. Even Rodgers didn't look too bad. He got picked twice, I think, in that game, but he also made some good plays. Granted, the Eagles gave them the ball. Their special team stinks, so they gave him the ball in great field position a couple times, and AJ Brown with that fumble that got returned to the 10. But I would have some interest there. Some Watson, Lazard or something. Watson, Cobb, Yeah, I don't think that's nuts. But aside from that, just looking at everybody else here, I would rather just go to the ones that are higher owned because they're not that high owned. Whether it's Jacksonville, Cincy, Miami even is interesting, very expensive in a very tough matchup. I was actually, to be honest, Neil, we could close with this, but I was surprised right now to see that we're projecting Tua for the second highest ownership at quarterback in this specific matchup.
Yeah, it's not the best matchup. I mean, it's a pretty tough matchup against San Francisco. Maybe people are just, it's worked so many times. Maybe people are just saying, just got to jam in Tua with Waddle and Hill. You just know who you're going to there. But yeah, against the Niners, I don't think that I'm going to be playing a ton of Tua. I think I actually have some interest on the other side of it. I think Ben said on the show yesterday he doesn't have any interest in playing Jimmy G. I think I have a little bit more interest just because it is a matchup that I think it's a, the Miami's defense is not formidable. And if we're expecting Tua and the Dolphins offense to be able to score it all, I think San Francisco is going to need to be throwing the ball a little bit to keep up. So I have some interest in Jimmy G, although looking at the tools, we do have him a little bit over on 4.2% projected ownership, 3.4% chance to be in the top stack. So it is a little bit tough, but I think you work it out. And especially since I already like Christian McCaffrey, I could see myself doing like a McCaffrey and Kittle stack, maybe doing kind of an unconventional stack with Jimmy G. But yeah, maybe not the best spot in the world. Also interesting to think about whether we want to play Deshaun Watson here. 6.7% projected ownership against Houston, going back to Houston. Do you think you'll go there at all?
Probably. I think he'll probably be pretty popular too. I think this comes up.
I think it does too. Because I think people are going to be talking about all this week. Deshaun Watson returning to Houston. People are going to want to play him against a bad defense. So yeah, I don't know. I might go there some. It makes sense. Like he will be going back to Houston, maybe have some revenge on his mind. Maybe Rusty. It's a little bit tough situation to read in Cleveland.
All right. Well, hey, you can follow Neil at PlayerQDFS. Check out, what do you got coming up this week?
What do I have come? Nothing today. I've got all my showdown stuff coming out tomorrow. I've got my writing article, doing 2 videos on demand about how I'm setting up Fantasy Cruncher, and then live before lock. And then on Friday, we've got On the Contrary. Steve Buzzard will be joining me and Alex, so that'll be a great show. Saturday strategy show with Greg, and then once again doing Sunday Night Football live before lock with Eric.
All right. Hey, appreciate you guys. As always, follow me at Lafayette_D. Remember, link to Prize Picks down there. Get your free month of Stokastic plus Platinum. $100 first match deposit bonus. That's in the description, especially for you, those you listening after the fact. BetMGM promo 10 in the 200. No brainer, guaranteed to get it. That's in the description. And we'll see you back here tomorrow for the Marathon Matchup Show. Bring your supplies. And shout out to Tyler Zander for producing this one as always. Peace.